from the Walton Suite, Winchester Guildhall. The time is 6:30 p.m. My name is Councillor Johnny Morris, Chairperson of the Committee. This meeting is live streamed from the Council's YouTube channel, and the recording will also be available after the meeting. Subtitles can be switched on, and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. Can I remind members to use their microphones, and can everyone ensure mobile phones are on silent? In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Can I welcome the members of the public to the meeting? And we will invite you forward when it's time for you to make a contribution. Swinging to the agenda, item 1, apologies. We have apologies from, Nancy, do you want to add to that?
I believe we have apologies from Councillor Brophy, and I think Councillor Aaron is deputising, but she's not here yet.
I think we have apologies from Councillor Aaron as well. I think she was unable to make it too, so we've been unable to find a deputy for Councillor Brophy. Item 2, disclosures of interest. Any declarations? Fabulous. Item 3, the Chair's announcements. Items. It's items 9 and 10 on the agenda, which is the Auditor's Annual Report and the Auditor's Annual Results Report. Because there is a degree of overlap in those two items, we'll be asking Simon to introduce both reports, and then we'll move into questions and discussion of both of them, treating them as one item rather than spending even more time doing everything twice. Thank you. And then item 4 is to note the Audits and Governance Work Programme, where we're going to be back here again at the beginning of March, I think in 5 weeks' time. So that's noted. Good. And the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 27th of November 2025. Are these agreed as a correct record? Fabulous. I shall sign them shortly. Public participation. Mr. Tate will be speaking on the relevant items on the agenda rather than at this point. Thank you. If he could wave his arm if I've forgotten him, be much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, then moving on to the next item, which is the certification of claims and returns annual report, which Director of Finance will introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The report in front of you, AG 178 this evening, introduces the audit report produced by the reporting accountants, KPMG, for the work undertaken on the Housing Benefit Subsidy Assurance process for the financial year 2024-25. The audit is required by the DWP to scrutinise the subsidy which has been claimed by the Council in respect of housing benefit payments. To be clear, the remit of the audit focuses solely on the payment of benefits for which subsidy is being claimed and does not cover the Council's administration of the housing benefits process, which is dealt with by the Southern Internal Audit Partnership every 3 years. And the last report for that in December 2023, it gained substantial assurance audit opinion. So I'm very pleased to bring this very positive report to the meeting this evening. The detail of the outcomes for the report is referred to in the summary of initial testing, which is on page 4, and then the appendices B on pages 5 and 6 and C on page 6. 2 points were raised by the audit team. The first refers to an observation that they included in the report for transparency. They make reference to an incorrect classification of a claim as housing association as opposed to local housing allowance. However, this error had no effect on the benefit paid to the claimant or to the amount of subsidy stated within the claim form. One cell was overstated by £3,714 and a corresponding one was understated by the same amount. So no further testing was required in this area. The second point is detailed in Appendix C and refers to amendments. This case again did not affect the overall balance of subsidy claimed, which for context is just under £18 million a year, but it did result in a slight overpayment of benefit to a claimant. The error was found to be an isolated incident, so again, no further testing was required. The benefits team processes thousands of transactions every year, so it really is an incredible achievement to do this, yet produce so few errors. In addition to the usual testing, This year, the benefits manager undertook the initial preparation of the workbooks required for the auditors. So rather than the auditors themselves doing that work, we did it in-house. This required the input of all the claim data for those cases selected by the auditors and does take hours to complete this piece of work. But it did mean that the team have reduced the audit bill by nearly £14,000 this year by undertaking the work in-house. So I'm very happy to take any high-level questions that I may be able to answer in lieu of the benefits manager being here this evening with you.
Thank you. Councillor Power.
Chairman, thank you. I think congratulations are certainly due given the volume of claims that we handle. However, is there no prospect of a better system than what appears to be a spreadsheet, and also the laborious transcribing of data from one system to another? It seems archaic in this day and age.
As I say, this is an audit which is performed for the DWP for their assurance on our subsidy claims. So we don't specify it. The scope of the audit is specified by the DWP. It is laborious, and there are a very limited number of auditors that have the capacity or the willingness to take on this work for councils. So I have been in discussion with fellow 151 officers at other district councils to see whether we can collectively try and procure services to try and achieve a better outcome. But to answer your question, it's not our specification or process, I'm afraid.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, and I would, having spent 35 years working with spreadsheets and calling it IT, I would defend my position most as a technical role. We've got in the paper that the variation in housing benefit calculation was £121 out of £8.5 million, which sounds tiny. What is in the volumes? There's one error and transaction error out of how many total in that 1 year?
As in how many cases were tested?
How many transactions total were carried out?
I don't have the detail of exactly how many thousands of transactions there are, but it is in the thousands of transactions.
If there's no further questions, any debate?
Just congratulations to the team yet again, Chairman.
Yeah.
I think it's remarkable that we have such a low error level on such a cumbersome process.
You saved me having to say it. I can just say I agree with Councillor Power, which is very useful, and it's the head assurance.
I recommend this as a path in life.
Thank you. So I shall say that we have noted that update. It's appreciated. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, which is the Community Infrastructure Levy and Section 106 payments. I have a verbal update, but I think Mr. Tate wanted to speak on this item. Is that correct? So this is a good time to go for it. You have 3 minutes as usual.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address this committee. I've looked back through the agendas of the Audit and Governance Committee back to 2022, but I couldn't find any reference to a SIL or Section 106 payment paper, nor could I find the Council's Management Action Plan. I recently served a Freedom of Information request on the Council asking for details as the Section 106 affordable housing payments received by the Council since 2020. The reply stated that the Council had received £3,959,817.22 in total, of which £2,633,123.21 have been received from the consortium undertaking the development of 3,500 houses at North Whiteley Urban Extension. I would mention that only £75,000 was mentioned to have been spent over that period of time in 21 to Hyde Housing Association. I was on the planning committee when the 3,500 houses, the outline application was approved. I voted against the application as the scheme offered 25% affordable housing, but 10% was proposed as a commuted sum for off-site delivery. That was £50,000 a dwelling, 350 dwellings, so that totals 17.5 million, of which you've received 2.5 million. I strongly argued that the affordable housing should be on-site provision, and that's what your policies say. I challenged officers saying that it was the land that was required and not the money. I said I was very sceptical that £50,000 would deliver one affordable home. At your last meeting, I spoke about the council's New Homes programme, and I strongly questioned the cost of that programme. In particular, I made reference to the Woodman Close development approved by Cabinet on the 14th of October 25. I spoke at that meeting, which was looking at using £327,500 of Section 106 subsidy to deliver one property. Now, I appreciate that figure has been reduced to £200,000, as I've learned from the Cabinet Housing Papers. This just seems to demonstrate to me the profligacy of the council's hugely expensive New Homes programme. At the current rate of subsidy, you're going to deliver more like 50 or 60 homes. I would be very interested to know what the council's auditors feel about the best value of the New Homes programme. And I did spend some time looking at the conditions on Section 106. I would argue, if I was a clever barrister, that the council are not complying with the Section 106. I don't think the consortium are going to ask for any money back, but there will be occasions when people will question that. The money that you're spending from North Whiteley in Sparsholt is a long way apart. And I wonder whether there's some weaknesses in the council's procedures on the Section 106. And I welcome what Mrs. Pinnock is going to say on the update, which I would have loved to have heard.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Thank you. I'm not entirely sure how this applies to the particular item on the agenda, but if Councillor Cutler or Director of Finance wants to address it in their responses, they are more than welcome to. We're now going to have the verbal update. Director of Finance to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the reason I sit here this evening in front of you to discuss developer contributions and community infrastructure levy is due to the limited assurance audit report, which was reported to this committee by Southern Internal Audit colleagues as part of their annual internal audit conclusion report for the year 24-25. And that highlighted some weaknesses in the processes around the billing of community infrastructure levy. And I believe a verbal update was given to you on my behalf at the last committee meeting to say that we had progressed management actions to remedy the weaknesses that had been identified, and that we were making progress towards refunding the overpayment that had been made by developers on their SIL contributions. So I'm really pleased to say that the refunds have now begun. We have internally reviewed and signed off that process, and Julie Pinnock is here this evening to answer any detailed questions that you might have.
Thank you. Councillors, questions? Councillor Power got in first.
How long do you anticipate that it will take to actually make all the corrective actions that are necessary?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Powell. It's a good question. I think what we've done at the moment is we've done a pilot because we wanted to see how long it would take us and what the issues are. And I will be honest, you know, we picked out some of the easier ones because it's how you hold people's financial information and data. So we've done some refunds. We've done over 10, I think we're 8 to 10, and we've got those processed, and they went out in a pay run very recently. We can replicate that now, I think, fairly easily over time. I think what will be harder is as we go back further, because this issue occurred back in 2014, and in the indexation year in 2014 it was accurate, and then it exponentially impacts that base rate figure year on year. I think it will be harder to find people's details and to go back, so I think it will take longer, but I envisage sort of being able to do I mean, if I said 6 months, I'd be sort of maybe guessing a little bit, but I think, we certainly our intention to get underway and get as many done as we can. And we do need to do that weekly and pace ourselves because the index rate changes every time we cancel it. So every time we calculate it. So we have to then work, and we've worked really collaboratively with our finance colleagues, and they'll calculate the indexation for us up to the date they know we're going to do the payment. And then we'll issue those. And I think we'll do it on a phased basis, probably over 6 months, maybe take a bit longer, but it's certainly our intention to track that progress. And if I would say there were, just can't find my own figure now, I think it affects 330 something cases. So if I give you that as a sort of a baseline to understand that we've done 8 in one, and a couple of those were duplicate applications, and we did that quite easily once we'd got the process right. Getting the process right and understanding that was quite complex, but we really feel we're there now, and I think we'll keep tackling some of those easy ones, but I do think we'll probably need to adapt our process to tackle some of those more complex, challenging ones, and we'll probably try and run those in parallel. So as you know, that those people that are owed money from a longer period ago with greater interest will start to see the benefit of that as well.
Thank you. I think I caught a hint in there, Mrs. Pinnock, that it will be difficult to make some of those refunds. Do we have a cunning plan for how we are going to hold those, and how we're going to represent them in the accounts?
That's a question probably for Mrs. Keys.
Yes, so the SIL contributions are all ring fenced, and the interest due on those refunds are being calculated, as Pinnock says, individually. So we will continue to hold those as being owed to people on our balance sheet.
I have a question. The process of refunding the SIL money, that's not affecting or any ongoing or provisional projects that were going to be funded by this. Nothing's being delayed, cancelled, or downsized as a result of this.
No, not at all. And I know that there's two wings of the SIL. There's one is the SIL collection bit that my team administer, and then there's the spending bit, which another sort of part of the council, and it's certainly not affecting that. Making those bids and working with the communities to spend that SIL money on various projects. I think that's your question, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor God.
Thank you. Is the internal auditor happy with the proposed approach being adopted by the council?
We worked with the auditor when they identified these issues, and obviously had to look long and hard about what our response would be to that. And we do, when we work with the auditors and they identify, it's up to us to then identify the management actions that we'll take. And they were satisfied with that, and they signed that off, and then that went through Ms. Keys and our director legal to be satisfied as well. And obviously we knew that would then result in something coming here, because nobody wants less than the result we got, but we need to work on that and put it right.
Nothing further to add. As with all of our reports, we identify the issues and the management team identify what actions they're going to take to address the issues. We satisfy ourselves we're comfortable for them, and those actions are then tracked through to completion through the council's own internal mechanisms.
Thank you, Councillor Chamberlain.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if I heard you right, if we've processed 8 to 10 of the items and there's 330 to go. Appreciating 6 months was maybe a ballpark. Would it be prudent to ask for an update to Audit and Governance, maybe not at the March meeting, but at the first Audit and Governance Committee in the new municipal year, as to how we're progressing?
I am very happy to keep committee members updated with the progress that we've made. I think the important thing is that we identified the error, we've put in place an action plan to address that error, and we've made sure that going forward that error can't occur again. It's probably worth saying that it was to do with indexing up a figure, and one of the index base rate was 2 digits different to that it should have been, which created an overpayment. But we're talking about quite minor overpayments in the millions of pounds of SIL that's collected. So I just wanted to reassure members that this is not significantly eating into the pot of community infrastructure levy, to address your question around you know, will this prevent us from being able to do still funded projects? No, this is a very in the context of community infrastructure levy, a tiny amount.
Councillor Bailey Morgan.
Thank you. Sorry, just to clarify, well, how much are we looking to have to pay back? Do we know at this stage?
Thank you, I have. So if I can just say that the total seal we've collected since 2014 is 27 million. So we're in the millions of pounds there. So the over collection was 220,980 to be precise, which, you know, in my report, I said that was less than 1%. I appreciate that doesn't make it right. But in terms of those figures and volumes and what we need to do now, and then the interest payments equate to about 26,000. Obviously, they'll change as we have to calculate it for each repayment.
I see no more hands up, and I have no further questions. So if we move to debate on this item. I see no hands up again. It's lovely. I think thank you for the update. It's much appreciated, and it's reassuring to know that this is being dealt with, and that there are no adverse consequences for the council in this. We move on to the next item, item number 9, which is the and 10 combined, very excitingly. The auditor's annual report and the auditor's annual result report. I shall now hand over to Simon Mathis from Ernst & Young to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So the first report that you have in your pack, which starts on page 25 of the papers, is our draft 24-25 Auditor's Annual Report. The main focus of this report is on the work that we do around the Council's value for money arrangements. So we look at its arrangements for financial sustainability, its arrangements for governance, and its arrangements for the way it ensures economy, efficiency and effectiveness in the way it uses its resources. It's necessarily in draft. It can't be finalised until we issue our opinion on the financial statements. The draft was initially issued electronically to the chair of the committee and the Section 151 officer at the end of last November to meet the deadline specified by the NEO. The draft you've got in front of you is substantially the same as the draft that was shared then. The main changes are just around the financial statements. As I've said, the purpose of the report is to set out our detailed narrative commentary on the Council's VFM arrangements, which we do in section 3, starting on page 39. We then have to flag any areas which we intend to report by exception in our audit report, so significant weaknesses in arrangements that we intend to report by exception. As per the tabular summary on page 40 of your papers, we intend to report significant weaknesses in the Council's arrangements for governance and improving economy, efficiency and effectiveness. Those issues all stem from weaknesses in property compliance management for HRA properties owned or managed by the Council, and governance and internal control within the Council's Housing Service and Property Services Department. We set out narrative on the issues, the Council's response to them, and the additional work that our forensic specialists did to gain assurance over the adequacy of the Council's response on pages 45 to 47. We then set out how we intend to report by exception on pages 51 and 52 of papers. We raise a related recommendation for improvement on page 56. I will take the report as read, so I don't propose to go through all of those issues in detail here. In terms of the response, the recommendation, which is all around the implementation of plans and actions designed to address the weaknesses. At the time this went into papers, management were going to provide a response. That response has now been provided. So when the report goes out as final, that management response will be included. I'll stop there on the auditor's annual report, and if I could move on to the next agenda item, the audit results report. So the audit results report primarily focuses on the work that we've done to gain assurance in relation to the Council's financial statements in 24-25. We're very close to completing our work now, so things have, in terms of the outstanding matters, moved on from when the report was put into papers. You remember that the whole context of this is the reset of local public audit and local government, and the fact that we've issued disclaimers in the past. We intend again to issue a disclaimer in 2024, 2025. But we did complete, with the exception of IP and PP evaluation, all of our planned procedures. The areas where we've not been able to gain assurance are set out in the summary at Appendix B on page 97 and 98 of papers. The Council's progress in rebuilding assurance, so getting back to where we can issue an unqualified opinion in the future, remains on track with the National Audit Officer's guidance. However, if we don't address the issues on property, plant and equipment and investment property valuation next year, it will move off track. So we still consider that's an important issue. We've assessed and rated, as we have done across all clients, arrangements to support the execution of the audit. And you can see the summary of arrangements on page 70, where we RAG rate, as in ineffective, requires improvement, or effective. So the Council's arrangements are generally good. And I want to be very clear on that. So the quality of the financial statements, the quality of the working papers, the responsiveness of officers, the accounting competence is good. So you'll see from the report, from reading it, that one of the risks this year has been around the adoption of IFRS 16, which is a relatively complex new accounting standard on leases that requires work to adopt. The Council have done really well in terms of adopting that. That's not been consistent across other clients that I audit. I look at that table and there is more green and less amber and red in that table than for other councils. However, we're still in a position where we cannot get assurance over PPE valuation for assets carried at existing use value and fair value, and investment property valuation. So we've raised the control recommendation. It's essentially the same recommendation as last year. Last year we said it was medium priority. We're now saying it's high priority. We're now saying this is the one thing that you really do need to address if we're going to keep you on track for rebuilding assurance. I think I'll stop there. We'll throw all of that open for questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Bailey Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Mathers. I thought I'd start with the topic of valuations. Obviously, you've mentioned it again there, and I know we discussed it at the last meeting as well. So I guess I understand that now this issue has been going on for 3 years. It doesn't strike me as it's any closer to being resolved than it was when it probably first came up. So on the one hand, obviously we have Ernst & Young continuing to issue a disclaimer of opinion due to identified weaknesses in the valuation of property, plant and equipment and investment property. And then, if I'm understanding things correctly, in the draft management response letter from the council, we appear to be stating that we believe the methods, assumptions and data used by the council, I assume via the external valuator, have been consistently and appropriately applied in making the valuation. So that strikes me that the two sides are very much at loggerheads. And I can only see two ways out of this. One is that the council needs to, and I don't even know if this is realistic, contract a new external valuator whose methodology aligns with the expectations of Ernst & Young, or the existing external valuator changes their methodology to align with your expectations. I'm not entirely sure if either are realistic, but they strike me as the only two ways that this issue can move forward. I'd be very keen to know what both sides think of that and whether there is some other alternative that I've not considered. Thank you.
I suppose the first point to make is just to be absolutely clear, the disclaimer is not solely related to the valuation of PPE or IPE this year, but the ability to remove it will be if we don't get that issue addressed. I suppose so. This is a significant risk at the council. We flag it as a significant risk in our approach because of the problems that we've had in prior years. If it's a significant risk, we need to involve our valuation professionals. Our valuation professionals look at valuers across the spectrum. They look at valuers across the corporate world. They look across a large number of valuation professionals. They are very well placed to say whether practices is compliant with industry standards, whether assumptions are reasonable, whether the level of evidence is reasonable. They have said now consistently for 3 years that it's not. At the end of the day, it's our opinion on the statement. So we will be informed by the work of our own valuers where we think there is a risk. We've reported it very clearly. I suppose it's for the council to determine what the course of action that's necessary to address it going forward.
Councillor.
Mr. Mathers has set out there about it being a significant risk, and that is why they involve their external experts. I just wanted to I suppose, reiterate the point that we've made in the past, that it is classified as a significant risk, and the NAO require you to do the procedures as you undertake them as our external auditor. But we have to keep in mind that having a materially misstated value of investment properties on our balance sheet does not carry with it the same risk as that might have if we were in the corporate world, because if we were to dispose of any of those assets, they would be revalued at the point of disposal to get the market value. So it is a significant risk, and it's certainly a significant risk to getting a clean audit opinion to us, but I just wanted to put that in the context of what that risk means for the council. Mr. Mathers would like to come.
I'd agree with that. I mean, your investment properties, it is important that you have an accurate value. The operational property, plant and equipment that you use to deliver services, it's a much less meaningful number. However, the financial reporting framework that's set by SITFA says you have to revalue it. As long as that's the case, that's where we sign an opinion that says you comply with the financial reporting framework, we have to look at it. Investment property is much more meaningful, and as you say, when property, plant and equipment becomes surplus or held for sale, it is fair valued at that point.
So back to the question that you asked, and it's not for our external auditors to influence the valuers that we choose to use. We have a professional external valuer that we use to do that. But I don't disagree that there are judgmental differences between the professionals that we use and the professional valuation team that EY use to verify those. I am very happy to work with both sides of that mid-year so that we don't crash into the team having to issue an audit opinion before we can resolve those judgmental differences. I'm reliant on EY providing to us the detail behind the issues that they identified with our valuations, and then I'm very happy to work with our external valuer to try and rectify those.
Can I ask a quick follow-up?
If I could follow up too, so get Councillor Barrymore one first.
Thank you. I guess just going back to the last meeting, Mr. Aiken said that they'd asked Ernst & Young to share the details and they hadn't been shared. And obviously Mr. Mathers said they're very happy to share the granular level detail. It wasn't quite clear to me what is happening in that regard. Is obviously you're requesting that sort of information. Is it being shared or isn't it? And if it's not, can it be? Thank you.
We will share that.
I have a follow-up first before the councillors. Is when you said you were going to reconcile the different valuation judgments, how would you go about that? Would you be splitting the difference, or would you be trying to sort of see which one was the most correct, or how would you go about that?
So in previous years, we've got together the two valuation teams and we've asked them to look at the basis of the valuation, the assumptions that they've used in it, and there's been a certain amount of challenge across the table. Our problem is we always run out of time to be able to find an agreed point. Of course, Mr. Mathers and his team can identify judgmental differences, but the important thing is if those judgmental differences result in a material misstatement of our accounts, and that's what Mr. Mathers and the external audit team are here to do, and to bring any of those to your attention. So this year we've been unable to identify whether those judgmental differences would or would not have resulted in material misstatements. We don't know.
Thank you. Councillor Power.
Thank you, Chairman. So, Mr. Mather, this is the third time we've had this on our report. Two reds are too many. Have we now got a plan which will allow those differences to be reconciled in an orderly manner to ensure this does not recur on this year's audit, the audit of this financial year.
So we will feed back at a granular level the weaknesses in the approach of the value of the deviations from standard practice and the issues with the assumptions made. Mr. Keys is right that we can't say this year, because we deliberately halted our procedures because we don't want to go through a massive time consuming and costly back and forth to get to that position. We also only ever test a sample of the properties, so we don't test all of your properties, we test a sample. So if we find issues, the difficulty then is how pervasive are those problems and what would be the impact on the untested population. We will feed back those things at a granular level. It's then, I think, for the council, for you as the audit committee, to be comfortable that appropriate actions are being taken to make sure there is no repeat. I mean, I have to be clear that this has been an issue across audits. This is not an ongoing issue in this way across the other audits that I do. Other councils have taken action to address it in one way or another. So I need to be clear that, and that's why I'm raising it in the context of a set of accounts that are really very good, where we don't have too many issues, where there's a good level of accounting competence, working papers are good, we get good responses to queries. It's the one thing at the moment for us on the financial statements.
So if I can draw you to those other councils for a moment, where they have had differences, how have they resolved those differences, and could we learn from what they have done?
It's a matter for those councils what they do, but they've often changed their valuer.
Council Director.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I look forward to receiving the granular details so that we can look at the assumptions that the EY real estate team use, so that I can pick that up with the valuers that we use.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the report, it refers to confirmation that methods and approaches adopted are in line with CIPRA guidance. There's clearly a difference in what is the correct methodology to be used in valuation. What is the standard that EY are auditing against?
So,
Microphone, please.
in terms of the professional standards, that for anybody undertaking a valuation, they need to be RICS qualified and they need to follow the valuation red book. In terms of the requirements of the financial reporting framework, the council's specialised assets are valued at depreciated replacement cost. The council's non-specialised assets are valued at existing use value. Its council dwellings are valued at existing use value social housing, and its investment properties fair valued. Valuations are an estimate, right? So there's always a degree of subjectivity. That's why regulators and auditors are interested, and we would only ever, when we're testing the valuation of asset, we would arrive, and our valuation colleagues do the same thing, at a reasonable range. So a lower and a higher valuation, and as long as it's within the range, that's reasonable. So there's always an appreciation in the approach that we take that this thing is inherently subjective. However, for the sample that we test, we can't get reasonable responses from the valuer. We think some of the practices put those assets outside of that reasonable range. Some of the practice of the valuer is different to what our valuers will usually expect in terms of delivering that particular type of valuation. So those are that's the overall professional qualification that a valuer needs to have. Those are the valuation bases in the accounts, and that's how we approach testing it.
And so why is our valuation not using that approach?
They might be referring to indices and other valuation methodology, not methodology, but other assumptions around markets for particular assets, for instance. I know valuers will look at recent sales of similar assets to gain market value information. It might be that we've got some particular assets in Winchester, the Brook Shopping Centre, for instance, which you can't compare, or it's very difficult to find comparable sales in the recent past. So there are lots of judgmental areas where they will look at sets of information in order to come to a valuation conclusion. But without the granular detail from the EY team, I can't ask my professional external auditor to explain what they've used that's different.
Councillor Pincher.
Thanks, Mr. Marvers. Thank you, Chair. So where other councils have had a similar, red rating, and then they've worked, out of that, is it really the case that invariably more of your methodology has been used so that there's a sort of meeting in the middle, or your standards have been adopted without any change at all?
So it's not us that prescribe the standard, it's the financial reporting framework that sets out the requirements, and the valuers follow accepted valuation methodology. So what I would say is, at the moment, we don't think assumptions made. So Ms. Keys has referred to comparables. We don't think comparables are reasonable, or there are enough of them in some instances. We don't think assumptions made are reasonable. We think some of the underpinning evidence is inaccurate, and we just don't get the quality of response that we would expect from the valuer. So it's not kind of meeting in the middle, it's having sufficient evidence to support what we're given.
Thank you.
Councillor Godfrey again.
And yet, you talk about not meeting in the middle. As far as I can say, you haven't provided the detail for any meeting in the middle at all. Are we not going to? We discussed it at the last meeting, and we were given the assurance that that discussion was going to take place. It has not. 3 months later, why have we got this delay? If it's that important,
We've been working to complete the other procedures on the financial statements, which we've done, and we've completed all of the planned procedures. But we've undertaken to do that. We will do that.
We can confirm it's in the work programme for the next year's audit, and we should be expected to be. We should expect to be in a year's time. We should expect to be receiving your audit and saying this has been satisfactorily resolved. Correct?
We will feed back at a granular level on what was wrong with the valuation this year. It is then for your external valuers, management, and you as the body charged with governance to get assurance that they've addressed those issues.
Thank you. Councillor Power.
Mrs. Keys, thank you, Chairman. Mrs. Keys, is actually changing our valuer an option, in your opinion?
We're in the middle of a 3-year contract with our current professional valuer, but clearly, if our property team look at the evidence that comes from EYRE and cannot understand how our external valuer has come to a different conclusion, then we will have to work with them to try and move it forward. But we are in the middle of a contract.
Bailey Morgan.
Exactly the same question, so continue, please.
Councillor Godfrey, going on to a different point.
On page 31 of the papers, executive summary of the report, it refers to a whole of government accounts outstanding procedures. Will these be completed by the end of February? And what are they, please?
So we're required to do work on behalf of the NAO, who audit whole of government group accounts and the local government, the consolidated local government accounts. The NAO just need to confirm to us. When the statements don't move anymore, there is a consolidation return that we give assurance over. So we need to do the rest of the audit first, because We need to give assurance that what gets consolidated upwards is accurate. It's a very short piece of work. We then need to wait for the NAO to confirm that they don't want anything else doing, but it's not something that will prevent us giving an opinion on the accounts. It's not something that's going to hold anything up.
I shall take a turn. On page 85, the audit differences, the summary of adjusted differences, it says at the time of writing this report, we have not received the final statement of accounts to confirm the above adjustments have been correctly made. Can I ask if you have received them since the time of writing the report, or when those adjustments should be made? Thank you.
We've received a further iteration of the account subsequent to the report being written. We are comfortable that the adjustments will be made. There's a low level of error in the account outside of the one issue that we've talked about. And yeah, before we opine on the statements, we will check to make sure that the adjustments are correctly made.
Thank you. Councillor Power.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm also moving on to another subject. On page 45, there's a reference to weaknesses in property compliance management and contract management. I've seen Mrs. Key's response, which I'm very happy with. However, I would like to know where progress on that action plan is being monitored and reported. And I would like to ask Mr. Harvey when the property services maintenance was last subject to an internal audit. Thank you.
If Finance Director goes first.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the improvement plan that I referred to in my management response to the EY report will be monitored internally by officers, and it will go to our Programme and Capital Strategy Board, so PAC board. That will meet regularly to ensure that we are making progress on the actions that we've set out in there, and then a summary of that will go to Cabinet Committee Housing to ensure that members are cited on the progress that's been made.
And do we have a window as to when that might be?
It's not going to go to Cabcom Housing next week, but it will be on the agenda of the next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Power. A review of housing asset management responsive repairs was undertaken in 22-23, and outcomes of that were reported through our usual progress mechanisms.
I have a question regarding this issue with housing management, as in moving to account management. Would it be wildly inaccurate of me to say that if the internal audit is satisfied with the progress that's made in the next year, that the external audit is likely to find come to the same conclusion?
We would look at a variety of information sources, one of which would be the work of internal audit. We, as we have done this time, it's important for us to know that that work is reliable. So we would look at it in some depth potentially. But yes, that would be certainly one area, a source of assurance for us in gaining comfort that the issues we've flagged and where we've recommended that actions are tracked, that they are actually being delivered against.
As a follow-up, what other criteria would you be using in evaluating assurance on this item? What other things would you be looking at in terms of making your judgment?
So I think the things that have been asked for now, so kind of regular updates against the plans, keeping an over where there is any slippage against the plans, perhaps holding people, asking people to attend, to explain deviation from where you are, just general oversight that those plans are being delivered as they are expected to be within the timescales that have been agreed. Those are the actions that we'd expect you to undertake, and that's what we will look at. We will look at the progress against delivering those actions when it comes to doing our work again next time.
Thank you. Councillor Pinniger.
Yes, Mrs. Keys. It was mentioned earlier that some very onerous manual data processes were going on. And I just wondered if this could be a factor in the question we're discussing now, and if so, how old the databases might be or processes that are being used.
So the actions will centre around whether we've got adequate controls in processes and whether there are improvements that we can make to those processes. As I circulated to committee members my management response to the issues, I did note in there that we are looking to procure, we're going out for a new repairs and maintenance contract, and we considered the output of these audits when we were specifying that contract. So within that, the technology that we will use, the systems, the requirements we have of the new supplier should bake into these processes better controls, more transparency, and more ease of reporting.
Thank you.
Can I have a follow up? I don't know if I'm preempting anyone else's question, but that's obviously the new contract will be in place in 18 months' time. What is being done in the meantime regarding particularly our software system, which does, as described by the internal audit, sounds like it should be in a museum of antique computer systems. Thank you.
I'm happy for Mr. Harvey to chip in as well, but I think it was less that the issues identified were less to do with the system, the computer system that we were using, and more to do with how we were using them and the process we were using. So one of the findings was around how we checked invoices and how we assured ourselves that they were right to pay. So we're looking at how we sample test those, whether any of those are done by desktop exercise, the evidence that we collect and store around the work that was undertaken. So it was less to do with the systems and more to do with the processes that we were undertaking.
Mr. Harvey?
So I've spoken at that's good summary, but it's the wider systemic issues really then about the ability to get meaningful management reports out of the system as well, which will then help with the compliance checks as well. So, you know, the two do go hand in hand, but certainly the systems, no matter how old or good they are only as good as the information that's put in them in the first place and how they're utilised, which is where a lot of the shortcomings were.
So without, sorry, I'll just do my follow up. So using the existing computer system, do you think that we would be capable of getting assurance without changing that?
I don't see you've got any other choice, because you're not going to have a new system that you can use before the new one's procured. So it's a case of having to make the best of what you already have with interim measures up until that system's replaced.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Yeah, I was saving this for the latter agenda item, but I'll chip in with it now because it seems more relevant. So Councillor Godfrey will correct me as always if I'm wrong on dates, but I think this particular system of procurement dates back to the early 2010s in terms of when it was first adopted by the council. So I guess my question from an internal audit perspective is, where we have systems such as these and processes which have been used over a number of years or decades in this case, is there any specific consideration from an internal audit perspective to do sort of routine checks then on how these systems and indeed processes are being used by our officers?
Yes, we have an agreed internal audit plan. This comes through to the committee every year with any variations, again, transparently reported through to yourselves. And obviously it's a matter for the public record that you can see that those systems have been obviously planned to have been audited on a regular basis, where housing asset management and obviously housing in general is such a big area. You'll certainly see for the last few years, for the detailed records that I have, you need to go back further on the public record for things that are outside of our attention, that we would look to cover, or we plan to cover every element of significance over a reasonable audit cycle. You will also perhaps see from then annual reports and regular progress updates any reasons why those audits may or may not have progressed for whatever reason. So again, I think I can talk in detail about the last 3 to 4 years and answer any questions on them, but we would certainly look at every area of materiality and every area of considerable things over a reasonable cycle. But obviously, not just focusing on housing, that is on the entire council operation, so it does need to be commensurate with the assurance that we need to give across the board.
Liz?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that I don't think it's not a fundamental issue with the system, but the data that was entered into the system. So if we can improve the data that we're putting in, we can improve the reporting that we're getting out, but the system is fit for purpose.
As a follow-up on that, regarding the data, is it the situation that it's all new data that's being entered is being validated, or is someone being tasked with going through the records and checking everything that's been done in the past?
Because of the number of transactions that go through the housing repairs and maintenance, you can imagine what that is for a housing stock of nearly 5,500 properties. I think it's important that going forwards, we make sure that the data that we're putting in, and I say from this point, I don't mean from today, I mean from the point that we recognise that there were issues, that we improve that going forward. I don't think there's a way that we could correct the data that was entered previously.
Thank you, Councillor Power.
Thank you, Chairman. It occurs to me that one of the problems with this system is that historically it has been very high volume, but each transaction is of comparatively low value. And I know that sometimes a lack of management of that creeps in because of the volume and the low value. Do we have other systems of that nature where we should be concerned? Thank you.
I don't think so. I think this is quite isolated to this particular area of services that the council delivers because of its nature, as you say, the high volume and the fact that it sits outside of the financial ledger. So if it came to paying other invoices or reviewing other work, it's done in a different way for other areas of the organisation.
I put that question to both auditors if they agree with that. Is that correct?
I would tend to agree with that. This is an area that it's kind of a riskier area because of the volume of transactions, the fact that you're dealing with an external contractor. It is an inherently risky area. Clearly, with this, some of the issues, and I think Mr. Keyes is right that it is around the quality of the base data rather than the system itself. Also, there are probably cultural issues here, so governance control within the service. So both of those things, I think, are probably the most significant drivers of the issues.
I can only really answer what I've said previously, where we look at huge volumes of systems, which generally we give the assurance that they are fit for purpose. So I think this is isolating again, really re-echo that it's only as good as the information that's put in there, that fields are correctly completed and that there's appropriate evidence to support anything that's in there, which when we talk about the audit in more detail on the next paper, obviously I can talk through those issues in more detail.
Thank you, Councillor Pinniger.
Mrs. Keyes, is it right that well, I'm interested in knowing where residents have sort of said, look, this repair hasn't been done, and how that's sort of fed into the system, because we were hearing about this last time, I think, and I'm not quite clear how that data is handled.
I'm not close enough to the service to be able to talk about exactly how that happens, but if a repair is logged with our repairs hub, and then it was logged again because it hadn't been repaired, then we would pick that up as we went to put it into the system again. And one of the pieces of work that was undertaken in the audit of this area was looking to see whether there were multiple low level transactions for the same property to indicate breaking down of larger jobs into smaller values, or whether there was a particular trend of repeated jobs being billed to us. And I'm sure Anne can comment, but they didn't find any indications that that was happening.
Councillor Bailey Morgan.
I've got a slightly different question. I'm not sure if that's a Godfrey one. Okay. So I was sticking on the housing compliance improvement plan. I'm not sure who I'm directing this at, and maybe Councillor Cutler. Are there any concerns that LGR preparatory work in relation to staff capacity could have an impact on it? Thank you.
Because this relates to the housing revenue account, I think the reality within LGR is that the housing revenue account will translate en masse into the new authority, and it's not actually a priority area for dealing with it. If you look at the various combinations that are the four options as they sit at the moment, the option that we preferred with Test Valley and East Hants, neither of those councils have a HRA. The HRAs, it would not be a priority even if they did to merge them. It wouldn't be one of those things we'd be looking at day one. And because the HRA is ring fenced, I think there is work obviously required as part of LGR, but the housing revenue account will transfer virtually wholesale into a new arrangement, so it shouldn't affect capacity for day-to-day work, and I think that's the key element of it. Clearly, longer term, if we were with New Forest to have a housing revenue account, that authority would in time perhaps look at merging them and seeing what was best practice in either authority, but it's not an area that it's not one of our bigger concerns on LGR, is it?
Liz?
Just to specifically pick up on the compliance improvement plan part of your question, I would say that absolutely not. It is a top priority of ours to make sure that those compliance actions are completed, and we regularly meet with the housing regulator to demonstrate our progress that we've made on that improvement plan.
Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you. I have one lifetime or councillor lifetime ambition, and that is to remain forgotten and absent from a rotten borough's column of a private eye. So far, so good. But one of the regular elements, reasons for appearing there is the auditor turns around and says they didn't do the obvious. We have got on this report today a number of identified weaknesses on several of key areas: value for money, financial sustainability, reporting, governance, which we have discussed in detail. I think we need to. But at the moment, the audit committee would seem to be heading towards taking a very passive response to this audit report, despite the disclaimed result that we're expecting when it's finalised. Is this passive response what the external auditor would expect from us, and what the 151 officer would expect us to be doing? Or should we be asking both more questions and for more actions, responses, which we have not yet asked for?
So I suppose for context, and again, the disclaimer doesn't relate wholly to the specific issues that we've identified here. On the value for money points, The reporting by exception needs to be taken seriously. I think you should be taking that seriously. I think the question around what can we do to gain assurance that the actions that have been committed to are actually being delivered is a very relevant question for you as a committee. So taking interest in how progress against their housing compliance improvement plan is being tracked is important. For the internal reviews that were undertaken, making sure the recommendations that have been agreed to are being implemented is important. On the accounts, the financial statements, again to stress, outside of the one issue that we've talked about an awful lot, they are good. So, and the arrangements to support them are good. So from our perspective, it is just that one issue. And we want to be very clear on that now, because we're saying you evaluate all of your property, plant and equipment and investment property annually. You don't have to do that for your property, plant and equipment. You could do it over a rolling 5-year period. Because you do that, if you get it all right next year and we don't have an issue with it, you're on track. And we'd be moving you from a disclaimed to a qualified opinion, and then ultimately next after that to an unqualified opinion if nothing else remains unchanged. So the reason that we are particularly flagging that is it's the 3rd year we've said it, and it's something that can derail your progress if it's not addressed in the context of everything else being in a good position on the accounts. That would be my view.
From my point of view, it may feel to the committee like you're taking a passive role in this. I just wanted to assure you that officers are taking a very active approach to dealing with this. And I think probably the best thing would be for an update audit of progress against those actions to be included within the audit plan as it develops, and then Mr. Harvey and the team can give you some assurance over the delivery of those actions. So that's quite normal, where we've had a limited assurance audit report, for us to commission a follow-up audit report in the following year.
Councillor Bailey-Morgan.
Thank you. I guess just go back to my earlier comment on the draft management letter and my reading of it. See, Councillor Godfrey used the word passive, which is probably quite appropriate. I mean, based on the conversation we've had today, should that letter be updated slightly to suggest the sort of what we're going to do to meet the expectations of Ernst & Young regarding the valuation of property? Because at the moment, my reading of it is you're basically saying that you think what our valuator is doing is correct. It doesn't. When I read it, I didn't sense that we were necessarily going to do anything further. Thank you.
So that's the management response in the report to the recommendation that you're.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like I'm following up from Councillor Godfrey's previous comment about the passive nature of the draft management letter, and certainly in relation to the valuation of the property, plant, equipment, etc. I didn't sense from the draft management letter that we were taking on board the importance of reaching some sort of agreement, so we don't get a disqualified opinion next year.
Thank you. I intend to work with our external valuer to understand where the differences come from. So I'm not digging my heels in and saying my valuers are right, your valuers are wrong. But in order to move forward, I need to understand where the differences of opinion are. So once I've got that, I will then work with the external valuer to understand whether we can get to an agreed approach between those judgmental differences.
If I just quickly come back, I mean, that's certainly clear to me in terms of what the plans are moving forward, but would you not put that in the draft management letter, or you don't think it's necessary?
The management response to the area in EY's report, not the letter of management representation.
It's quite possible I'm getting my management letters mixed up, but I thought it was the one on behalf of the council responding to the findings.
I think it's the management response to the recommendation that's been referred to, and we can look at that in the final version of the report, because I think you're right. If we've been clearer on what our specific course of action or the council's management specific course of action is to address the issue is probably important to just get that in.
Yeah, I completely understand.
Because if I can just clarify, the letter of representation is more of a letter of agreement and acceptance of the audit. It is not a statement of any actions that are resulting from it. Is that correct?
Yes, it's standard practice. You give us representations about the accounts because you are the body charged with governance. We ask for it on every audit engagement. There is no non-standard wording in Winchester's letter.
Thank you. Councillor Power looks like she has a question.
Sorry, sir, Chairman, I'm a little confused. We're being asked to accept and approve this audit report. One of them is incomplete because only the committee have seen the words prepared by Mrs. Keys of the management action and response. We are not expected to approve or accept these tonight, are we? Or are we, with that addition? Would that be proper?
If
If you're satisfied with that response and you're all aware of that response and are cited on it, I think you could do that.
I'm very happy to read out the management response that I circulated to members of the committee for the public record, if you wanted me to do that now.
If that is acceptable to the committee, it is acceptable to me. I'm just very aware that that statement has not been in the public domain.
I think if we can, anything that gets it officially sort of appended to the auditor's report would be very useful. Yes. Could you refresh our memories of everything you wrote? Thank you.
So the response that I circulated to members was as follows. Management will continue to deliver the Housing Compliance Improvement Plan. In response to the SIAP and counter-fraud reviews, management has also compiled a Housing Property Services Improvement Plan, which addresses the weaknesses in internal control and risk management arrangements. Progress against this improvement plan will be monitored by the Executive Leadership Board and reported at summary level to the Cabinet Committee Housing. Many of the proposed improvements have also been considered in drafting the ITT for the new repairs and maintenance contract, where enhanced technology and workflows will improve controls.
So can I ask some matters on page 56? It says a response will be provided by management for the final version of this report. Do you accept that you have received a response from the management for this?
Yes. And we will when the report is finished and we've given the opinion there are no outstanding matters, we can recirculate it to all members of the committee to complete it for completeness. So yes.
Thank you. Councillor Gould.
However, going on to page 108 of the report 109, the draft management representation letter. In paragraphs 5 and 6 of that letter, and these may be standard wording used in representation letters, but they do state that our chairman and the 151 officer are going to state that the methods and the significant assumptions and the data we used in making the accounting estimates are in accordance with the SISTA code of practice, SIPA code of practice. And in 6, we believe the significant assumptions we used in making accounting estimates are reasonable. And yet our external auditor has stated quite clearly in the draft report that they are not. So I'm not sure we're continuing to say in our representation letter that we don't agree.
Does anyone want to unpick that seeming contradiction?
Can I just quickly add whilst thinking of a response? And that is exactly the point I was trying to get across. And thank you, Councillor Godfrey, for making it a lot clearer than I did. Thank you.
So if in approving the financial statements, you are asserting that they are prepared in accordance with the requirements of the financial reporting framework and proper practice. So we're only asking you to confirm what you do in approving the financial statement.
If I may, I'll just remind committee that the work that the external auditor undertook hasn't identified material misstatements in those accounts, and I have signed them off as a true and fair view of the financial position of the council at the 31st of March.
Thank you. As I'll be signing it, I understand it as being a confirmation that we have provided information that's correct and full to our knowledge, and I'm very happy to sign it on that basis.
So I would say that I have commissioned a RICS qualified valuer in accordance with the requirements. They have valued the assets in accordance with the Red Book and with the requirements set out in the SIPA code. There are potentially some judgmental differences between the outcome that they came to and the opinion of the EYRE team. But again, there's no indication at this stage that there are pervasive or material misstatements in the accounts.
Thank you. Any further questions from councillors? I shall move on to Ray. Fantastic. Thank you. Shall move on to a debate on this item. Thank you. Councillor Chamber.
Thank you, Chair. Without, well, dragging us back to PPE and investment property just one last time, it does strike me that maybe as a collective, we shouldn't be surprised that if in effect we have some paid consultants on one side of the table and then a third party's council paid on the other side of the table, that we shouldn't be surprised that you know, I say this as a consultant myself, there are differing opinions. And whilst I sort of note the questions about, you know, should we be looking at changing consultants, I do fear that that would just introduce another set of opinions to the mix and would be left with triangulating, you know, 3 different sets of opinions. So I think it was Ms. Kesey who said earlier on, and I personally agree with any future discussion, no doubt there will be future discussion on this with this committee, you know, given the work that's ahead of us, and this one has to focus on the materiality of the difference. We shouldn't be surprised that there is a difference of opinions. The key thing for us as a committee is the materiality of the difference.
2 points I'd just make in relation to that. So again, our valuers review the work of many valuers across the whole profession, working across government and public sector and also in the corporate world. These findings are not their ordinary findings. So it's not like they're disagreeing with everybody that they look at. That was one point that I would make. In terms of the materiality, fine, but to determine that, we have to keep going and going and going. So if we find weaknesses, if we don't get answers to them, then becomes a question of it's not just the assets that we've looked at in our sample, it's how pervasive are those problems across the whole population. So you need to be able to accurately quantify, you need to look further and further and further. At the moment, we've got a statutory backstop date of the 27th of February, which means, you know, we don't want to crash through that. We want to get to a point where we give an audit report based on what we've done at that date. We also, based on prior year experience and previous discussion with the committee, I don't want to be in a position where we're doing work and racking up more and more cost to deliver that work and still end with the same conclusion. So it's those factors that have prevented us quantifying. If we do want to quantify, we're going to need to start the work earlier and make sure it can be fully completed with any error quantified if there is error, such that we can bring that back to you. If it's not material, we won't require you to adjust. You can tell us why you don't want to adjust, like any other non-material unadjusted misstatement, and we'd report it. If it's material, it continues to impact our audit report based on our numeric measures of materiality.
And I think that's my point. I don't mean to cast aspersions on the experience of either side's, you know, valuers. The key thing for us as a committee is this material or not, I think, is the item that's in front of us.
Thank you. For no further debate, I'll just sort of sum up. And I think it's always sort of alarming for members of a committee when then the audit comes in and it says there's a risk of a significant weakness. But I think this demonstrates the value of having an audit. This is the whole point of the process, that you exist to help us by pointing out where there is a significant weakness. And the fact that we have a management plan and action plan to address it shows how this works effectively. And I'd also just like to For my own reassurance code, the finding was on page 81, there was no evidence of financial irregularity or non-compliance with law and regulation, which again is a very reassuring thing to have an auditor say. There's no other management. Are we happy to note this report with the management response that we've heard included? Yeah, so recommendations on the first audit is that we've taken the opportunity to discuss the thing, and we confirm our acceptance of the audit report. We confirm our acceptance. Agreed, thank you. And do we approve? We've considered the matters to approve the letter of representation that I and the Director of Finance will be signing. Is that approved? Agreed. Thank you very much. I think this item is completed. Thank you, Simon, for your good work. Okay, if we can now move to item number 11 on the agenda, which is the audited annual financial report. Director of Finance to introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the annual financial report that comes to committee every year ahead of being authorised for issue. The draft annual financial report came to committee in the summer, and committee were able to attend a training course facilitated by an external expert in October, just to walk through that draft statement of accounts, ask any questions and enhance your understanding of those. So this is bringing you the version of the accounts since it's been audited. So it includes the audit adjustments that we've made as a result of the work that EY have done.
Thank you. Any questions from councillors? We've all seen a draft version of this before. It's very familiar to us. And I don't think there's any significant changes. I think there's some typos that have been fixed, but that's about it. Is that correct?
Yes, sorry, I should have said there are no significant changes to the draft version of the accounts that was presented to committee in the summer.
Any questions? I can move very quickly on to debate. And
Thank you. Sorry, I mean, I had a question, but I didn't think it was maybe one to lead with, but if no one else has any. I couldn't help but notice the HRA outturn section, page 142, spoke about a staffing restructure with savings of, I guess, around £400,000. I forgive me for asking, but I mean, is there any? Are we confident there is no link between that staffing restructure and those savings, and then obviously the serious failings that came about in property compliance management? Thank you.
The restructure in the housing department, if anything, I think exposed some of the issues that we had within the housing department. When you get a fresh pair of eyes looking at processes, questioning why is it that it's done like this, I think if anything that helped us to understand the issues that were discovered in the internal audit report. So I don't feel that the savings and a reduction in resources was any causality behind the issues that were discovered.
And because I'm still relatively new, am I right in thinking those issues date back quite some time? So how long roughly? Do we know?
Time immemorial.
Okay. And the restructure, of course, was only in the last financial year.
Yes, that's right. Initially, an audit was included in the audit plan back in 2023, which was because following COVID and the return to normal work, we identified an increase in the repairs and maintenance spend across the housing stock. So to understand what was driving that increase and whether it was due to the rapid inflation that we saw, materials costs, or whether there was other underlying issues around potentially overpaying, that caused us to initially put an audit in the audit plan and start the work off.
thank you. I'm sure we'll discuss more of that when we come to the internal audit plan. Any more questions on the audited annual financial report? Good, I can move to recommendations then. Thank you. That's we approve the audited statement of accounts as set out in Appendix 1. Hooray! And so I shouldn't say hooray, that's too informal. And that the chair of the audit committee, I'm going to sign the statement of responsibilities on page 32. You happy for me to do that? Great, thank you very much. Okay, moving to item 12 on the agenda, it's the internal audit progress report. And Ian Tate wishes to speak on this item, so this is his chance to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address the committee again. You may recall that I spoke at the meeting on the 17th of July last year about the Winchester High Street Market. I pointed out that the pitch fees were collected in cash, even though the new market contract agreed last February had said that the intention was to switch to electronic payments. The head of finance pointed out that the internal audit progress report in Appendix B stated that the internal audit risk assessment rated the risk as high and that it would be actioned in Q4. If you refer to Appendix A, page 6, it simply comments scoping 050126. The appendix report goes on to state that there are no high priority management actions. I checked earlier today and the pitch fees are still being collected in cash. I'm staggered by the inaction of the council in view of the significant risk the internal auditor has given to this matter. The market management company have told me that they can't make the arrangements to switch to electronic payment as this needs to be done by the city council through their bank NatWest where I used to work. So the council has to make those arrangements. This is a ridiculous situation for the council to be in. Even the big issue seller takes card payments. This isn't just to do with the collection of pitch fees, it's also to do with the collection of vital information. When a trader applies for a pitch, they have to be assessed, and once accepted by the council, they are issued a unique reference number. There is proprietary software on the market which, if used, would enable the council to know which traders are taking pitches on any given day, which is really important. The market manager tries to reward regular traders with premium pitches over the Christmas period when traders can expect to make significant profits. Over Christmas, the demand for pitches outstretches the available pitches, so there is great competition, hence why the council bumps up the pitch fees. It's basic supply and demand. At the moment, the council does not know who has taken the pitch and how often. Trading in January and February often means the traders actually lose money, but they want to demonstrate their commitment to the market manager. Please be certain I'm not implying any impropriety by the market management company, but as the internal auditor has highlighted the risk, there surely needs to be something to be done. I'm fascinated by the paper Cabinet looked back in October 23, and it states here, all payments should only be made in favour of Winchester City Council, and it says cash will be discouraged. It's not discouraged at all. That's the principal form of payment. Nothing's been done since I spoke 6 months ago. Absolutely shambolic.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. I now give the Cabinet Member, Finance, and the Internal Auditor and Director of Finance all an opportunity to respond to that if they wish. Who wants to go first?
I won't speak on this because it's not my area of expertise at all. The market is the market contract is now run by the economy team and the market. So I don't know the full details behind that, but it was a matter for the audit, and we probably do have some idea of the progress. So.
So I would say all of the points that Mr. Tate has made will be addressed by the audit that we've commissioned. It was in the audit plan and that audit is underway.
Yeah, I can, the audit, sorry, my computer's just logged off. The audit was indeed scoped on the 5th of January. Draft terms of reference was issued after the scoping meeting, and the final terms of reference was issued on that. It's agreed and signed off by the management team on the 16th of January. The field work is scheduled in and on the terms of reference, and the outcomes will be reported, as with every audit, through to the audit committee in due course. Certainly one of the focuses for the audits is in and around the income collection arrangements and the reliability of that. Obviously, I can't conclude or comment on the outcome of that audit until that work has been undertaken, but it's going to take place as scheduled and agreed.
Thank you for your responses. It's appreciated. And we can now have the internal audit progress report. Anthony Harvey to introduce. Thank you.
Chairman, sorry, by checking that detail, I've jumped onto a different paper. There you go. Thank you. So this presents my internal audit progress report as at the end of December 2025. So clearly doesn't show the activity that's taken place in January. At the time of reporting is reflected on paragraph 11.5 of the covering report, which is agenda page 244 of your pack. At the time of reporting, 61% of the audit plan was completed at least through to reporting stages. The same corresponding paragraph, 11.5, also references the no assurance review, where a summary is provided on agenda pages 254 through to 255. The only other element I'm going to draw to your attention before obviously open it to your questions is on paragraph 11.6, again on agenda page 244, which references through to agenda page 256, where we track all actions through to completion. There are 4 areas where the management team have confirmed that since the previous update, all of those actions that arose out of those audit reviews have been completed and finalised, and there remains 4 medium priority overdue actions, which is fairly reflective of the level of overdue actions from previous reports, with anticipated completion dates confirmed by the management team to be delivered on or before the end of March 2026, with further information provided in the annex on page 257. So obviously that's the key highlights from the report, but I will pause there for questions because I'm sure there may be 1 or 2.
Thank you. Questions from councillors? If anyone's worried about going first, there's nothing to be scared of, right? If there's Councillor Benny Morgan.
I mean, it's not that strong a question. I feel like I had this conversation with Mr. Harvey last time. Looking at the report, what have we got? I think about six audits yet to start and 2 where the field work has just started. I'd just be interested to know, out of those 8, how many would you anticipate being finalised by the end of March? Thank you.
Finalised by the end of March is always a challenge because obviously some of our work naturally spans into the new financial years, where we're looking, for example, end of year reconciliations. But as things are currently stand, every audit has now at least been scoped bar 1. But we are in active discussions to line up a scoping meeting for that. Terms of references have been issued and agreed for everyone bar 2 audits because of the timing of those scoping meetings, which were literally just last week. Obviously the field work windows when that work will be completed are outlined, and all of those terms of references, and if all goes to plan, I would imagine all field work to be completed in earnest across every review by April with reports, at least by April with reports following accordingly. So whilst I can never say with 100% certainty that every single last piece of work will be completed in time for the annual conclusion report, I remain absolutely confident that sufficient work could be concluded in order for me to form a reasonable conclusion. Anything that isn't quite finalised in terms of when the annual report and conclusion comes through, then by its nature carries forward into next year, and the results are always then transparently reported accordingly.
Can I just ask, because you'll be of the issues with the housing asset management account, which is going to require more scrutiny from yourself and more oversight, is that going to have a knock-on effect on the rest of your work programme, or do you think it's manageable within your workload?
Not for this year, no. It's obviously yet to see, as is reflected in the report, the full consolidated full action plan that addresses all of the issues out of all of the various work streams that have been undertaken, both by ourselves, by our fraud and accounts fraud unit team, and also the outcome from the other reports, for example, from the RSH work and other pieces of work that have been commissioned. Once I've seen that consolidated action plan, all of the actions that are arising, and obviously the timescales and when those actions could be completed, that will then inform what work we're doing for future years. We're currently going, or we have been through the audit plan and exercise and are pulling together the audit plan for next year. I will bring that through to the committee at the next available opportunity, which is early March, and then obviously you'll be able to see for yourselves what work is planned and when we anticipate to do that work. But certainly what's left to do this year will have no impact upon the work that we'll plan to complete next year.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Chair, I think that's just answered my question, but to double check, so for the no assurance opinion on housing and this, apologies, it's quite a specific question. So on page 255, the third paragraph from the end ends with, although there are potential indications of unresolved maintenance issues or duplicate jobs where further investigation, that further investigation will be as part of the action plan to be followed up by the housing team rather than further work by yourself under internal auditing.
Yeah, and there's a specific reason why we want to, obviously we want to look at this, the system, the approaches and everything is a whole rather than honing in on any one specific issue. Certainly with the work that obviously it started next year, and we obviously reflected where we were in the annual conclusion report last year, which very much said this is where we are and this is what's being done. We then obviously did a very, very deep dive and in agreement with the management team in and around some sort of specific issues, which is obviously then borne out in the report that's brought before you this evening on summary of the reports. As part of that follow-on piece of work that we did do within this financial year, where we specifically looked for certain issues in and around duplicate jobs, as Liz was mentioning earlier. Obviously that work's now been concluded, but should anything then come to light where it does then require additional work, but some of these things do take a disproportionate amount of time to do, but then we'll factor that into whatever follow-up work we do in future years.
Thank you. Any more questions? Good. No, everyone's happy. Then I can move this to debate. Councillor Godfrey.
If I may observe, this report covers a very busy period, but it is a very clear report. It also indicates that the response from officers to the audits is very positive, which is why we've only got 4 actions outstanding as of the date of this report, and that the level of response to these interesting audit exercises indicates an expertise that we are benefiting from as a council, and as page 1242 indicates in the financial implications, at a cost of £112,100 in this current year, would seem to me be good value for money for the amount of capacity that we are gaining from this. So I would commend both the internal auditors and the officers working with them for what is a very positive report, and reference the fact that the internal auditors are being used by the external auditors to support the external auditors' work. And I believe that is not normal in other settings. The expertise of the internal auditors is acknowledged by EY. I think that is to their credit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. I agree with everything said, and I appreciate you saving me the bother of having to say all that myself. So it's much appreciated. Any other sort of debate? Okay, well, as I said, Councillor Godfrey said what I was going to say, so I'm quite happy to have my thunder stolen there. And again, I'll reiterate the statements I made earlier, that this shows the value of an audit, that you are there to be a sort of a critical friend. And we appreciate you being critical, and we appreciate you being a friend. And so thank you for this, and I shall move to the recommendations, which are that we note the internal audit progress report. Do we note it? Agreed. Thank you very much, and thank you, Anthony.
Thanks, Chairman.
For attending the meeting. Thank you. We still have more from you. So number 13, we have your external quality assessment final report. Let's find out how it went. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chairman. So I'm pleased to present the outcomes of the external quality assessment, which you'll be aware that we were required to go through at least once every 5 years. So this provides the outcome from the external assessments, which, just to remind members, was against the new global internal audit standards that became effective in the UK public sector on the 1st of April 2025. So the assessment very much took place in the 6 to 8 months that followed the implementation as those new standards. A full copy of the external assessors is been provided for you as Appendix A for complete transparency purposes. Now, if I can just explain a little bit in and around some of the findings, with the overall opinion of generally achieves, which is the terminology that the IIA and the assessment needs to use. If there's any one element of any one of the parts of the underlying 52 principles that are anything but fully achieves, then it is impossible to achieve a full achievement overall. Is reflected in the external assessor's final report. The generally achieved opinion or generally achieved level is the global benchmark where the IIA wants people to get to. So we are past that global benchmark in 46 out of 52 areas with the fully achievement in those areas. With the generally achieved areas, which was 6 out of 52, some are within our control and some are outside of our control. So again, the likelihood of us being able to achieve full achievement within the time frames is obviously quite difficult, if not impossible. And we're absolutely really pleased with the outcome. To reiterate, there are no partial or non-conformances against any of the standards or principles, and there are no formal recommendations for improvement. However, where we always want to strive and learn, then any opportunities for improvement or any areas where things could get strengthened in order to work towards that full achievement across all areas. Obviously, we have developed a corresponding action plan, which again is provided for you as Appendix B. And obviously, I'm happy to talk about the assessor's final report, any of the underlying detail or the action plans if members have any questions in and around those areas.
Thank you. Do members have any questions on this? I challenge you to come up with a question on this. Come on. No, okay. It's very difficult. It's stubborn to me. I can't think of any questions. It's very hard to think of any questions on a evaluation. I'll go for it, Councillor Benjamin.
So which elements aren't within your control, Mr. Harvey?
So there are good old Hampshire County Council's cyber security measures are great, except your laptop logs off every 10 seconds if you're not actively on it. Bear with me. So the areas where we didn't confirm and that were outside of our control are certainly in and around standards 6.3 and 8.1. As part of the assessment, not only did they look at all of our underlying approaches that are common across partners, but then in order for the external assessment to apply applicably to each of our partners, each of our principal partners, I use the IO's terminology quite carefully, what we also then needed to do was demonstrate for each individual authority how it then complied with those standards. And there were certain elements in and around 6.3 and 8.1 that are down to the council to implement and not down for ourselves to implement. So, for example, in terms of all of the SIT for best practice, the audit committee guidance, any addendums that have come out from SIT for in line with these areas, there are elements that, for example, are down to the audit committees or the respective equivalents across our partner organisations to do. If there's certain bits that haven't been done, then that obviously impacts upon the outcome of the externally quality assessment. But again, where those areas have been identified, we've then drawn up individual action plans to work with each of those partners to highlight it, which hopefully they will address. One of the other examples as well is in and around 9.2, where the global standards say that you have to have a strategy that is aligned to the organisation's strategic objectives and strategic outcomes. With 35 partners, that is impossible for us to achieve under our current operating model. Obviously, things could change going forward under our GR if there are far less partners. This year.
Thank you. And these GIS 52 standards, is that sort of a set number, or is it a sort of ongoing thing where more standards get added every couple of years?
I'm not the standard setter, so I couldn't possibly answer that question, but the previous public sector internal audit standards that were in place for 10 years only went through a couple of minor revisions, so it didn't really make a significant difference. So I'm not expecting wholesale changes, but what we will expect is that because these are globalist standards, and obviously the setup in the UK public sector is then governed by primary legislation and statute. There needs to be certain documents that bridge the gap between what the global standards say and then obviously how they apply in the UK public sector. That guidance will continue to evolve over time as more people go through their assessments and there's more challenge, and SIT for sort of say, oh, this is the approach now for how it needs to be in the UK public sector. Other standards and other addendums obviously also follow. The IAA will also be releasing what they call our topical requirements that may or may not apply to ourselves. Obviously, as there's at the moment, there's been one formal topical requirement that has now been released and finalised. So how we address those going forward obviously very much depends upon the topical requirements and what we need to do, if we need to do anything to address them.
Thank you. It's nice to know that if your result in this will stand for quite a long time then.
It's applicable for the next 5 years in terms of requiring formal external assessments. But as we previously noted to members and previous reports were confirmed, we are still required to undertake, as we always were, in a self-assessment against all of the elements of all of the standards each year. The difference now with the global standards coming in is the outcome of that internal self-assessment will also be reported through to yourselves in full, whereas previously it was just a summary of confirmation that we'd done it and we were still complying. We could choose to put ourselves through another external assessment sooner should we wish to do so, but obviously that would just depend upon significant changes either to our approach, to our operating model, or to legislation to make it worthwhile. If not, it'd probably be an expense that you wouldn't appreciate being passed on to yourselves, even though it is absorbed over 35 partners currently.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, debate on this? Councillor Godfrey.
I think the result of this assessment is excellent, and the plan is sensibly ambitious. I'm delighted to have you as our internal auditors.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey. And, the plan is ambitious, but we always strive to be better.
If there's no further debate, I'll just echo those comments and say we applaud you and congratulate on your excellent result, and that is giving us assurance, which is what you're there for. So thank you very much for that. And I shall go to the recommendations, which are that we note the report of the external assessor following the external quality assessment of the, I'm going to gamble this, of the Southern Internal Audit Partnership against the global internal audit standards in the UK public sector, Appendix A, and the action plan developed against the suggested opportunities for future development, Appendix B. Is that noted? Agreed. Thank you very much. And I think that's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.